My name is Natalie Brooke Simmons. I was 32 years old the Thanksgiving my parents gave my younger sister a luxury cruise and handed me a $5 scratch card like an afterthought. I still remember the sound of the foil tearing under my fingernail, that dry, papery rip. I almost didn't scratch it at all. I laughed instead, because what else do you do when your own parents reduce you to a joke in front of everyone you love? What I didn't know yet was that within 20 minutes, I would be worth $50 million, and my family would never look at me the same way again. Before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you what my mother said when she realized the numbers matched, before I tell you how fast love can turn into hunger, do me a quick favor. If you've ever felt like the extra child in your own family, the one who tries harder and gets less, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me, because this story isn't really about money. It's about what money reveals. Thanksgiving at my parents' house had always felt like a performance I wasn't cast for. Same two-story colonial in suburban New Jersey, same perfectly folded napkins, same smell of rosemary and butter that never quite reached me emotionally. My mother, Linda Simmons, loved traditions, but only the ones that made her look like a good mother. My father, Richard, loved peace, which usually meant silence from me. And then there was my sister, Claire Simmons, 29, golden child, human spotlight. Claire walked into the dining room that afternoon wearing a cream sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair fell into place like it had been rehearsed. She kissed my parents on the cheek, handed over a bottle of wine, and smiled in a way that said she belonged there. I followed behind her with a grocery store pie and an apology I didn't owe. Dinner went the way it always did. My dad carved the turkey. My mom asked Claire about her job again, even though she'd already told the story 3 times. Marketing firm. Promotion coming. So proud of you, honey. Claire glowed. I passed the mashed potatoes. No one asked about me. That wasn't new. I'd learned years ago to answer questions that never came. Learned how to nod, how to keep my voice small, how not to make waves. I was the dependable one, the one who helped with bills when Dad's back went out, the one who drove Mom to appointments, the one who never needed anything, which apparently meant I didn't deserve much either. After dessert, Mom clinked her fork against her glass. "Before we clean up," she said, smiling wide, "your father and I wanted to do something special." Claire sat up straighter. I already knew who this was for. "We know how hard this year has been," Mom continued, locking eyes with Claire, "and how much you deserve a break." Dad reached under the sideboard and pulled out an envelope, thick, glossy, unmistakably expensive. "For you," he said, handing it to Claire. Claire gasped, actually gasped. She slid a manicured finger inside and pulled out a brochure. Blue water, white railings, champagne flutes raised against the sun. "A Mediterranean cruise?" she whispered. My parents beamed. 2 weeks, Mom said, all inclusive. Claire jumped up and hugged them both. Oh my God, thank you, thank you." Everyone clapped. I smiled too, because that's what you do when you're invisible but polite. Then Mom turned to me. "And Natalie," she said, rummaging in her purse, "we didn't forget you." She placed something on the table in front of me. A $5 scratch card. I stared at it. Bright red, cartoon dollar signs, the kind they sell next to cigarettes. "For fun," she added lightly. "You always liked little surprises." Laughter bubbled around the table. Not cruel laughter, worse, casual laughter. My face burned, but I forced a chuckle. "Wow," I said, "you really went all out." Dad cleared his throat. "You never know, might be lucky." Lucky. I took the card to the kitchen sink, scratching it with a coin while everyone talked behind me. I wasn't even paying attention. I just wanted the moment to be over. Then I saw the numbers. I scratched again, slower. My heart started doing this strange, uneven thing, like it was tripping over itself. I checked the instructions, matched numbers, prize listed below. I matched them all. Every single one. The amount at the bottom made my vision blur. $50 million. I laughed, out loud. A sharp, broken sound. This thing's fake, I said to myself. I checked again, and again. My hands started shaking. Nat? Claire called from the dining room. You okay? I walked back in slowly, card clutched in my fist like it might disappear. I said, my voice barely working, I think I won something. Mom rolled her eyes affectionately. How much? $20? I placed the card on the table. Silence fell hard, heavy, like the room had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. Dad leaned forward. Mom grabbed her glasses. Claire stopped smiling. That's not funny, Mom said finally. I'm not joking, I whispered. Dad read the card again. His face went pale. Oh my God, he said. And in that exact moment, before congratulations, before hugs, before anyone said my name with pride, I saw it flash across my mother's face. Not joy, not shock, but calculation. And I knew this win wasn't going to save me. It was about to cost me everything. For a few seconds, no one moved. The scratch card sat between the gravy boat and my mother's good china like a live wire no one wanted to touch. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and fast. This was supposed to be the moment where everything changed, in a good way. That's what people say about miracles. But the air felt wrong, tight, suspicious, heavy with something sour. My mother was the first to recover. She always was. Let me see that, Linda said, reaching for the card. Instinct kicked in. I slid it back toward myself. I think I should hold on to it. Her smile froze, just for a fraction of a second, but I saw it. That same look she used to get when I was a kid and said no to something she'd already decided was hers. Natalie, she said, softly now, I just want to read it. Dad cleared his throat again. He was staring at the card like it might explode. This could be a mistake, he said. These things, they mess up sometimes. I checked, I said, 3 times. Claire hadn't said a word. She was still standing, arms crossed, staring at me, not the card, me. Her eyes were doing something I'd never seen before, measuring, like she was trying to figure out where I fit in a picture she'd already framed. 50 million, she finally said, laughing once. That's insane. Mom shot her a look. Don't joke. I'm not joking, Claire replied. I'm just, wow. No one hugged me. No one said congratulations. Not yet. That should have been my first clue. Dad finally stood up. We need to be careful, he said. Natalie, you shouldn't tell anyone. Not yet. I nodded. I wasn't planning to. Mom reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was warm. Her grip was firm. This is a family matter, she said. We'll figure it out together. Together. The word landed wrong. Something old and familiar twisted in my stomach. A memory surfaced. Me at 14, getting my first paycheck from a part-time job. Mom insisting it go into the family account to help with bills. I never saw that money again. Another flash. College acceptance letters. Mine waved off because Claire needed more support. I'd learned early that in this family, together usually meant not in my favor. I think I should talk to a lawyer, I said carefully. The room shifted. Claire's head snapped up. Mom's hand tightened. A lawyer? Mom repeated, her tone sharp now. Why would you need a lawyer? You don't even know if it's real yet. Dad frowned. Your mother's right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I pulled my hand back. I just want to do this right. Claire let out a short laugh. Wow, you win 1 scratch card and suddenly you don't trust us? That hurt more than I expected. That's not what I said. It's what you meant, her voice cool. You always think people are out to get you." I stared at her. When have I ever said that? She shrugged. "You don't have to say it." Mom stood up abruptly. "Enough. We're all tired. This has been a long day." A long day, like nothing extraordinary had happened. I slipped the card into my purse, my heart pounding. "I'm going to head out." "What?" Dad said. "It's late." "I just need some air." Mom followed me to the front door. Her voice dropped the moment we were alone. "Natalie, you're being emotional." I laughed, a short, brittle sound. "I just found out I might be worth $50 million. And that's exactly why you need guidance. You're not good with big decisions." There it was, the sentence that had shaped my entire life. "I pay my own bills," I said quietly. "I live on my own. I've been taking care of myself for years. And look how hard that's been. This money, it's overwhelming. You'll need help managing it, for your own good." "For whose good?" I asked. Her eyes flicked away, just for a second. I left before she could answer. The drive home felt unreal. Streetlights blurred past. My phone buzzed nonstop in my bag, but I didn't look. I kept replaying the moment at the table, that split second when my mother's face had changed. Not happiness, not pride, possession. At home, I locked the door, slid down against it, and cried. Not happy tears, not yet. These were the kind that come from realizing something you've avoided your whole life is finally undeniable. I was never going to be treated fairly, not now, not even with all that money. My phone buzzed again. This time, I checked. A text from Claire. "We should talk tomorrow. Mom's really upset. You shouldn't push her like that." I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered, then typed back. "I didn't push anyone." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Just remember who's always been there for you," Claire finally sent. I almost laughed. Instead, I put the phone face down and went to bed fully dressed with the scratch card tucked into my wallet like a secret I didn't trust the world with yet. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's calculating look, heard Claire's voice, sharp and unfamiliar. By morning, my excitement had been replaced by a dull, steady dread. The next day, I called the lottery office. My hands shook as I gave them the numbers. The woman on the line went quiet. "Ma'am, you need to come in." It was real. By noon, I had an appointment with a lawyer recommended by a coworker. He was calm, methodical, kind in a way that didn't feel transactional. He explained trusts, anonymity, protection. He looked me in the eye and said something no one in my family ever had. "This money is yours," he said. "You don't owe anyone access to it." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until my chest tightened. When I checked my phone afterward, there were 12 missed calls, 8 from Mom, 3 from Dad, 1 from Claire. A voicemail from my mother played automatically. "Natalie," she said, her voice strained. "Your sister is devastated. She feels like you're shutting us out. We're your family. We need to be united right now." United again. Then Claire's message came through. "If you don't trust us, at least trust me. We need to talk, please." I sat there in my car, phone in my hand, the lawyer's words echoing in my head. This was the moment where old patterns either tightened their grip or broke. I typed back slowly. "We can talk that won't be about sharing money." The response was instant. "What do you mean by that?" Before I could answer, another message came in. This one from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Natalie. This is Aunt Marjorie. Your mom told me the news. Congratulations. We should really discuss what's fair for the family." My stomach dropped. They were already spreading it, already counting it, already deciding what belonged to them. I looked at the message, then at the lawyer's card on my passenger seat, and finally at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back, tired, wary, but finally awake. That night, I agreed to meet my family the next day. I didn't know it yet, but by the end of that conversation, I would discover just how far they were willing to go and who they'd already turned against me. I chose the cafe because it was public, bright, and neutral. Nothing like my parents' living room where every argument somehow ended with me apologizing for things I didn't do. The place sat on a busy corner downtown, all glass windows and clinking cups, the kind of space where voices had to stay low and emotions couldn't fully unravel without witnesses. They were already there when I arrived. My mother sat perfectly upright, hands folded around a porcelain cup she hadn't touched. My father stared at his phone like it might save him. And Claire sat closest to the aisle, Colt still on, foot tapping like she was ready to leave the moment things didn't go her way. All three of them looked up at once. Natalie, the problem, had arrived. "There she is," Mom said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We were starting to worry. "I said noon," I replied, checking my watch. "It's noon." I slid into the chair across from them and placed my purse on my lap, my hand instinctively resting on the zipper. The scratch card wasn't even inside anymore. It was locked in a safety deposit box. But old habits die hard. The waitress came by. I ordered black coffee. No sugar, no cream. I wanted my head clear. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then my mother leaned forward, lowering her voice as if we were conspiring instead of unraveling. "Natalie," she began, "we've had a very upsetting morning." I didn't respond. "Your Aunt Marjorie called. So did your cousin Elaine. People are confused, hurt." Dad finally looked up. "Your mom didn't mean to tell anyone," he said quickly. "It just slipped." Slipped. Right. Claire sighed dramatically. "Do you have any idea what it feels like," she said, "to find out something like this from other people?" I stared at her. "You were there when I scratched the card." "That's not what I mean," she snapped. "You've been acting like we're the enemy." I took a slow sip of coffee. It burned my tongue, grounding me. "I haven't done anything except protect myself." Mom's eyes flashed. "From us?" "Yes," I said simply. The word hung there, heavy and undeniable. Dad rubbed his temples. "This doesn't have to be like this." "But it already is," I replied. Mom straightened. "Let's talk practically. This money, assuming everything checks out, it's life-changing for all of us." There it was, the phrase that turned my stomach. "For me," I corrected. "Wow," Claire scoffed. I turned to her. "Do you remember when I covered your rent for 6 months after you quit your job? That was different. Do you remember when I co-signed your car loan? You offered. Do you remember when Mom asked me not to apply for that job in Chicago because it would be too hard on the family?" Mom waved her hand dismissively. "That was years ago. But this isn't. This is right now." The waitress returned, placed my coffee down gently, sensed the tension, and disappeared. Mom took a breath, recalibrating. I knew this version of her. The reasonable one, the one who sounded caring while steering the conversation exactly where she wanted it. "We're not asking for everything," she said. "We just think it makes sense to set aside a portion for family needs." "What needs?" I asked. She exchanged a glance with Dad. Claire leaned back, arms crossed, suddenly quiet. "Well," Mom said slowly, "your father's retirement isn't where we hoped it would be." Dad stiffened. "Linda. And Claire has student loans. A lot of them. Plus, she and Mark have been talking about starting a family." I felt something crack inside me. "So, this is about planning futures?" "Yes," Mom said quickly, "responsibly." "And what about mine?" I asked. She blinked. "What about it?" That answer hurt more than any insult. Claire leaned forward. "Do you not even want kids? You've said that." "I said I didn't want kids I couldn't afford, and I said that when I was broke." Her jaw tightened. "So now you think you're better than us?" "No. Now I think I finally matter." The words slipped out before I could stop them. The table went quiet. Dad looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt. But it passed. Mom reached across the table, touching my wrist again like she had the night before. "You've always mattered, sweetheart." I gently pulled my hand away. "Then why does it feel like I only matter now?" She didn't answer. Instead, she opened her purse and slid a folder on the table. I stared at it. "What's that?" "A proposal," she said smoothly. "Your father and I stayed up late working on it." "Working on what?" "A family trust," she replied smoothly. "You put the winnings into that trust. We help manage it. Everyone benefits." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You stayed up late planning what to do with my money?" Claire bristled. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," I said, my voice shaking now, "is that none of you asked what I wanted. Not once." Mom's tone hardened. "We're trying to protect you." "No," I said, "you're trying to control me." Dad slammed his hand lightly on the table. "Enough." People nearby glanced over. He lowered his voice. "You're being selfish." That word landed like a slap. Selfish. After years of being the helper, the fixer, the backup plan, I stood up. "I'm leaving." Mom's eyes widened. "Natalie, don't be dramatic." "I'm done being convenient." Claire stood too. "If you walk away from this," she said quietly, "don't expect things to go back to normal." I met her gaze. They never were. I walked out before they could say anything else, my legs shaking, my heart pounding. Outside, the cold air hit my face like a reset button. I sucked in a breath and kept walking, until my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story. Ask your parents about the loan they took out in your name." My stomach dropped. Another message followed immediately. "If you don't help them, everything comes out." I stood there on the sidewalk, people rushing past me, the city loud and indifferent, as one terrifying thought settled in. What had they done, and what had they used my name for? I read the message again and again, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. "A loan they took out in your name." My first instinct was denial. There had to be a mistake, some scam, some bitter relative trying to get a piece of the pie before it was even baked. But the cold weight settling in my chest told me this wasn't random. This was personal, precise, and far too cruel to be fake. I didn't go home right away. I walked, past storefronts, past people laughing into their phones, past a woman dragging a toddler by the hand, the child crying, the mother exhausted. Normal life kept happening, while mine tilted off its axis. By the time I reached my apartment, my hands were numb. I locked the door, dropped my purse, and sat on the floor with my back against the couch. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into my credit report. I told myself it was just to be thorough, just to rule things out. My parents had always handled finances better than me. That's what they said. That's what I was taught to believe. The screen loaded slowly. Each second felt like a warning. Then I saw it. A personal loan, 6 figures, taken out 3 years ago, in my name. My breath caught so sharply it hurt. I scrolled. There it was again. Another one, smaller but still significant, both marked as delinquent, both tied to an address I recognized instantly. My parents' house. I pressed my hand over my mouth. The room felt too small, too tight. They had used my social security number, my information, things I'd trusted them with when I was younger, when I thought parents didn't cross lines like that. A memory hit me. My mom asking for my documents, just in case, saying it was good to have copies. Another, Dad brushing off a bank letter that came to my old address, saying it was probably junk mail. It hadn't been junk. My phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. "You see it now, don't you?" I typed back with shaking fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came slower this time. Someone who didn't want to watch them ruin you twice. Before I could ask anything else, another message popped up. This one from my mother. "We need to talk, now." I laughed, a hollow, disbelieving sound that echoed in the empty room. I called my lawyer. He didn't interrupt while I explained. He didn't soften his voice either. "Natalie," he said when I finished, "this is serious. What they did is fraud." The word felt unreal, too big, too final. "They're my parents," I whispered. "That doesn't change the law, and it doesn't change your options." Options. I hated that word, because every option came with a cost. He told me what I already suspected. I could report it, dispute the loans, protect myself, but it would trigger an investigation, and once that happened, there would be no going back. I thanked him and hung up, my chest tight. Then I drove, back to the house I'd spent my entire life trying to earn a place in. My parents were waiting when I arrived. Lights on, curtains open, like they'd been expecting a storm. Mom opened the door before I could knock. "Natalie, thank God." I walked past her without a word and set my phone on the dining table, credit report open and glowing. "What is this?" I asked. Dad went pale. Claire, who was sitting on the couch, stood up slowly. "What are you talking about?" I said, "You took out loans," my voice steady in a way that surprised me, "in my name." Mom's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor. Claire's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" "I trusted you," I said, looking straight at my mother, "and you stole from me." Mom rushed forward. "We were desperate." There it was. No denial, no confusion, just justification. "Your father's medical bills, the house, everything was falling apart. We didn't know what else to do." "So you decided to ruin my credit?" I asked. "We were going to pay it back," Dad said hoarsely, "once things improved." "They never did. So you just let it sit?" Claire shook her head, backing away. "You didn't tell me this." Mom turned on her. "We did this for you, too." "For me?" Claire snapped. "You committed fraud for me?" I watched my sister unravel in real time, the pedestal cracking beneath her feet. For the first time, she wasn't protected. She wasn't chosen. She was just as expendable as I'd always been. I should have felt vindicated. I felt sick. "So this is why you needed the money," I said quietly. "Not help, control." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We're still your parents." "And I'm still your daughter, the one you sacrificed." Silence swallowed the room. Then Dad spoke, his voice barely audible. "If you report this, we lose everything." I looked at him, really looked. The man who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to pack my lunches, who'd watched this happen and done nothing. "And if I don't," I said, "I lose myself." Claire sank back onto the couch, stunned. "You were going to take her money to cover this, weren't you?" she whispered. Mom didn't answer. That was enough. I picked up my phone. "I'm leaving." Mom grabbed my arm. "Natalie, please, think about the family." I pulled away. "I am." At the door, I turned back one last time. "You have 1 week," I said, "to tell the truth to everyone, or I will." Claire looked up at me then, tears streaking her face. "What about us?" she asked. I paused. "That depends on what you do next." I walked out with my heart pounding, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. My phone buzzed again as I reached my car. A message from Claire. "I didn't know, but I know now, and I'm not covering for them." I stared at the screen, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. Because if Claire turned against them, there was no telling what my parents might do next. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city, headlights cutting through the dark, empty streets like they were my only allies. The messages from Claire kept replaying in my mind. I didn't know, but I know now, and I'm not covering for them. Her words felt like a lifeline tossed into a stormy sea. But a lifeline doesn't mean calm waters, it just means survival is possible. By the time dawn crept over the skyline, painting the buildings in muted gold, I had made my decision. This wasn't just about money anymore. It had never been. It was about my life, my trust, and the countless times my family had made me feel invisible, expendable, and powerless. I needed control. I needed boundaries. I needed proof that I could survive without bending to the whims of people who should have loved me unconditionally. I called my lawyer first thing. He had anticipated my decision. "We'll start by securing your winnings," he said. "We'll make sure nothing can touch it, including your parents. Then we can address the loans." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. His calm, methodical tone was grounding. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of clarity. Next, I had to speak with Claire. I didn't know if she'd really stand by me or if this was the beginning of a rift that would tear the last threads of our sisterhood apart. I drove to her apartment, my nerves vibrating with every red light I stopped at. I rehearsed what I would say over and over in the confined space of my car. When I arrived, Claire opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red, and I immediately noticed the tension in her posture. She didn't smile, didn't hug me. She just stepped aside and let me in. "I'm glad you came," she said finally, voice low. I nodded. "I need to know where you stand." She hesitated. I can't believe they did this. I really didn't know." "I know, but you do now, and I need to know, will you side with me or them?" Claire swallowed hard. I don't know if I can forgive them, not yet, but I won't lie or cover for them." That was enough. For the first time, I felt less alone. We spent hours planning, not just about the money or the loans, but how to navigate the fallout, how to protect ourselves emotionally, how to set boundaries without destroying the family entirely, though I knew that might be inevitable. By the time night fell, we had a plan. I would secure my winnings. Claire would document everything she knew about the loans. Together, we would confront Mom and Dad, calmly and strategically with the full weight of evidence. But life, as it often does, had a way of throwing a twist when you least expected it. That night, I received an anonymous email. The subject line read, "You're not the only one they've betrayed." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a folder with scanned documents, loans, credit accounts, and what looked like wire transfers. But they weren't all in my name. Some were other family members, some were friends, some were distant relatives I barely remembered. At the bottom of the email was a single sentence. "They've been manipulating everyone, and they'll do it again if you don't stop them." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. Not only had they committed fraud against me, they were a pattern, a history of betrayal. And now, armed with my winnings, I was in the crosshairs. I realized then that the situation was far bigger than I'd thought. Mom and Dad weren't just flawed, they were dangerous when it came to control. And Claire, brave as she was, might not be enough to stop them. I leaned back in my chair, heart hammering. My life had just become a chess game I hadn't agreed to play. But if I didn't, I'd lose. Not money, not status, but myself. And that's when I saw it. A name in the documents I hadn't expected. A transfer made last month directly to a private account under Claire's name. I froze. Had Claire known about this? Or had she unknowingly become part of their scheme? The thought twisted in my chest. I had trusted her. I had counted on her. But now doubt crept in, sharp and biting. Could I even trust her anymore? My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "We need to talk, now." I stared at it, heart racing. I wanted to trust her, but the documents burned a hole in my conscience. Something wasn't right, and I realized with a cold, sinking feeling that the next conversation, Our next move might either save us or destroy everything. And deep down, I knew that when I walked into that room, I wasn't just confronting Claire. I was confronting the truth that betrayal often hides in plain sight, and the people you love the most can sometimes be the ones you have to fear the most. I didn't wait. I drove straight to Claire's apartment, clutching the folder like it was a weapon. My mind raced with every possible scenario. Had she been in on it all along? Had I misjudged her loyalty? The thought made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. Betrayal is one thing when it's expected from a parent. It's something else entirely when it comes from someone you trust. I arrived just as Claire was stepping out of the shower. She wrapped a towel around herself, her hair wet, eyes wide as she saw the folder in my hands. "Natalie?" she started, but I cut her off. "I found this," I said, voice sharp. "Explain." She froze. I saw panic flicker across her face. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. I slammed the folder on the kitchen counter. Documents spilled across it. Loan applications, wire transfers, account statements. And there it was. Her name. My stomach dropped. "Last month," I said, pointing at the transfer, "an account in your name. Did you know about this?" Claire's face drained of color. "No, I swear I didn't know. Mom and Dad, they must have used my name without telling me." I wanted to believe her, but a part of me recoiled. Could she really have been so naive? Or was that what she wanted me to think? I paced. "Do you know how this looks? How it feels? I trusted you." "I didn't do anything," she shouted, tears now streaming down her face. "I love you, Natalie. I wouldn't—" Her voice cracked. I stopped, staring at her. I could see the fear, the panic, and beneath it, the truth. She had been manipulated too, not willingly, but trapped in their web like I was. The realization hit me like a punch. Mom and Dad had been playing chess with all of us for years, every move calculated, every pawn, even Claire, disposable when convenient. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. "We're in deeper than I thought," I whispered. "They're not just after my money. They've been doing this to everyone, and we're next." Claire sat beside me, her hand trembling as she reached for mine. "We can fight back, together." I looked up at her, the anger still burning, but something else creeping in. Trust. Tentative, fragile, but real. "We can," I said, "but we have to be smart. No more mistakes, no more emotions controlling us." She nodded, agreed. "I'll tell you everything I know. Every loan, every transfer, every lie." As she began recounting the smaller, subtle manipulations, I realized just how deeply Mom and Dad had orchestrated control over our family. They'd created a web so intricate that even the people who loved them most had been ensnared without realizing it. By the end of the night, we had a strategy. Document everything, secure evidence, keep my winnings hidden, and prepare for confrontation. But there was one nagging, terrifying thought. If Mom and Dad knew Claire had flipped sides, would they stop at nothing to regain control? My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown sender. "They know you're awake now. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone will survive this unscathed." I froze. Survive. The word felt literal. I looked at Claire and she caught my gaze. "What do we do?" she whispered. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the adrenaline that had been running unchecked for days. "We strike first," I said quietly. "We don't let them manipulate anyone else. Not us, not anyone." Claire nodded, determination hardening her expression. "Then we do this together." I nodded back, but deep down, a cold truth settled over me like a shadow. The next time I faced my parents, it wouldn't just be about money. It would be about control, deception, and survival. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go to keep their secrets buried. I glanced down at the folder again. all those lies, all those manipulations, it was a map of betrayal. And if I followed it carefully, I might just find my way to freedom, or I might fall into a trap I couldn't escape from. The night ended with that thought lingering in the air, heavy and suffocating, and I knew with an icy certainty that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I woke up that morning with a strange mixture of adrenaline and exhaustion, the kind of tiredness that seeps into your bones because you've been fighting battles your family doesn't even know exist. I had planned it all: the meeting, the confrontation, the exposure. I wasn't going to tiptoe around my parents anymore. Not after the loans, not after Claire's near betrayal, not after the messages from that unknown source warning me that this family had poisoned trust for years. I dressed carefully, deliberately. Not for them, not for appearances, for me. My suit was black, tailored, sharp, armor in fabric form. I tucked my phone into my pocket, folder of documents clutched in my hand. Claire waited outside my apartment, sitting in her car, eyes alert and serious. She looked like the sister I had always needed her to be, not the golden child my parents had worshipped. "Are you ready?" she asked. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until now. We drove to my parents' house in tense silence. The streets were unusually quiet that morning, almost as if the world itself had paused, waiting for what was about to happen. When we pulled into the driveway, I felt a sudden, piercing clarity. This confrontation wasn't just about money anymore. It was about truth. It was about claiming my life back. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there, her usual composed smile plastered on her face, but I could see it wasn't enough. Something about her posture betrayed panic, shoulders tight, lips pressed together. Dad lingered behind her, shadowed in the doorway, hesitant but protective. "Natalie, Claire, come in," Mom said, voice too cheerful. I walked past her, stepping into the house with the weight of the folder in my hand. Claire followed silently. "Can we talk in the living room?" Mom suggested. "No, we'll talk at the dining table." Dad's eyes flickered. That table, the same one where the $5 scratch card had changed everything, was now the center of reckoning. I sat down and placed the folder in front of Mom. Claire mirrored me across the table. "Everything in here," I said, my voice steady, "documents every loan, every account, every transaction you've manipulated in my name and in others." Mom's smile faltered. Dad cleared his throat, but I didn't pause. I wanted the full weight of realization to hit them. I wanted them to feel exactly what I had felt for decades: betrayal. "You think you can scare me with a folder?" Mom said, voice trembling slightly. "You think this changes anything?" "I don't think," I replied. "I know it does. This isn't about your pride anymore. It's about the law. It's about everyone you've manipulated, stolen from, and lied to." Claire began laying out what she had discovered: loans in her name she hadn't authorized, wire transfers that had vanished into accounts we didn't recognize, every manipulation meticulously documented, every betrayal exposed. Mom's composure cracked first. She grabbed a tissue, dabbing at her eyes, voice rising and falling. "You don't understand. We did it for the family. We were desperate. You have no idea what we've been through." "I understand exactly what you've been through. You've been choosing control over love, power over trust. You've weaponized family, and it stops now." Dad leaned forward, hands on the table. "Natalie, this isn't necessary. We can fix this privately." "No," I shouted, "it's necessary. For once, someone has to take responsibility, not just for me, for everyone you've hurt." Claire reached over, placing her hand on mine. "We do this together." I nodded, taking a deep breath. Then I did the one thing that would define the rest of my life. I called my lawyer. Not in whispers, not in secret. "Get ready," I said when he picked up. "We're going public." Mom's face went white. Dad's jaw dropped. Claire squeezed my hand, her eyes wide but steady. You can't! Natalie, think about the family." "I am," I said. "I'm thinking about me, about everyone who's been silenced for decades, and I won't be silenced anymore." There was a long, suffocating silence. Then, as if the universe itself exhaled, the front door opened and I heard the familiar voices of extended family. My aunt, my cousin Elaine, even distant relatives, all arriving at my lawyer's suggestion. Each of them had been affected by Mom and Dad's manipulations in ways I hadn't fully realized until now. Mom's shoulders sagged. Dad's hands trembled. Claire's grip on mine tightened, a shared, silent promise. "You were careful," I said softly, "but you underestimated me. You underestimated all of us." Mom tried to speak, but no words came. Dad stepped forward, hesitation and fear etched across his face. It was the first time in my life I saw my parents powerless, and the feeling was intoxicating. I opened the folder and began reading aloud. Names, dates, transfers, all of it. Every betrayal, every lie, every calculated move. My family had woven a web of deception so intricate that it took a lifetime to untangle, and tonight I was cutting the first threads. Claire spoke up, confirming each detail, supporting me. I felt a surge of power and relief unlike anything I had known. We were finally a team, not against each other, but against the manipulation that defined our lives for decades. Mom began crying openly. Dad's face was pale, defeated. I felt a pang. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, healing, boundaries. And in that moment, I realized I had won. Not just the $50 million, but something far more valuable. My voice, my agency, my life. But just as the room settled into this fragile truth, my phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown sender. "You've won the battle, but the war has only begun." I froze. Claire looked at me, worry etched across her face. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I just looked around the room at the shocked, silent faces of the people who had tried to control me my entire life and whispered, "It's over, for now." Because I knew, deep down, this family and the shadows of betrayal would never fully disappear. But at least for the first time in my life, I'd drawn the line, and that was enough to start rebuilding. The house was quiet now. Not the quiet of normalcy, but the kind that follows a storm, the tension hanging in the air, heavy and raw. I sat at the dining table, Claire beside me, the folder of documents still open between us. Mom and Dad had retreated to the living room, silent, shaken, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. For a moment, I thought about the $50 million. The money had sparked this entire chain of events, but it wasn't what mattered most anymore. What mattered was that I had finally reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my voice. Claire looked at me, eyes red but steady. "Natalie," she said softly, "I'm so glad you stood your ground. I don't know if I could have done it without you." I shook my head. "You were there too. You helped me see the truth, even when it was scary. That's what matters." We spent the next few hours setting boundaries with our parents. No more secret accounts, no more unauthorized loans, no more lies. We agreed that any future financial discussion would include full transparency and legal oversight. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was being heard, not manipulated, not dismissed, but truly listened to. Later that evening, I took a long walk through the city streets, my hands in my coat pockets. The air was crisp, and the sounds of traffic and chatter felt almost soothing after the tension of the day. I thought about everything that had happened, the scratch card, the betrayal, the lies, the revelations. I thought about how much pain had been hidden behind smiles, polite words, and the illusion of family harmony. And I realized something crucial. Forgiveness was possible, but it had to be earned. Trust had to be rebuilt, brick by brick, and boundaries were not punishment. They were protection. Protection for myself and for anyone I cared about. I pulled my phone out and sent a message to my lawyer, confirming that my winnings were now fully secured and that the loans were officially disputed. Then I sent a text to Claire. "Thank you for everything." Her reply was almost instant. "Always, we survived this together." I smiled. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace, not because the past was erased, but because I had finally claimed control over my future. I was no longer the powerless daughter, always overlooked and taken advantage of. I was Natalie Brooke Simmons, the woman who had scratched a card, uncovered a web of deceit, and refused to let betrayal define her life. That night, I locked the door, sat on the edge of my bed, and let myself feel exhausted and alive at the same time. I knew there would be challenges ahead. The unknown sender's messages hinted that not everyone's betrayal had been uncovered, but I also knew something else. I was ready. I had boundaries, allies, and a clarity I'd never had before. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a silent promise to myself. No one would ever take my life, my choices, or my worth for granted again. And if they tried, well, I was ready to fight. And now, I want to ask you, have you ever faced betrayal by the people you trusted most? How did you reclaim your power? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. Because in the end, we all deserve to stand tall, even when the ones who should have protected us try to tear us down.